Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Mallory Schnell here with WHAS 11 News. In Louisville, Kentucky, we are tracking a front that is moving through the region. It's sparking some strong storms across the area, bringing us gusty winds, heavy rainfall, frequent lightning. And even though none of these storms have been issued a severe thunderstorm warning, they're still packing a punch. In fact, at the Kentucky State Fair, they just posted on their Facebook asking people to head indoors, which is a good call anytime there's lightning in the area, gusty winds as well. So for the next 15 to 20 minutes, if you stay on here with me, we're going to talk about the radar. We're going to track this front that's going to bring us some relief this week, and then an even stronger front that moves in this weekend, bringing us some cooler weather, lower humidity next week. We'll even take a look at the tropics if we have time as well. But let's get straight to the radar this evening, because we do have an isolated downpour that popped up pretty much right over the fairgrounds, over the airport, and has pushed through Okolona. You can see that's diving more so down to the east and southeast, likely with some strong downburst winds there, heavy rainfall, some lightning as well, but you can tell it's pretty concentrated between about I-65 and Bardstown Road, and also kind of wedged right between the Watterson and the Gene Snyder there this evening. Now, the big picture view, if we do take a look at the radar kind of zoomed out, we were tracking these storms, if you joined us earlier this evening on our newscast, all thanks to a front that's diving into the area. So we do have one in-house model that had a pretty good handle on these storms, becoming somewhat linear, continuing to dive to the south and southeast. And if I zoom in here, if you can see these thin little green lines out ahead of those storms, a lot of times that's an outflow boundary. It can weaken the parent storm, so the storm that's back here, but it can also send out some gusty winds. It can spark additional storms downstream. So we're tracking some of those gusty winds approaching the Ohio River here. And a good chunk of our area is actually under what's called a special weather statement for wind gusts of about 50 miles per hour with these storms. And keep in mind, a severe thunderstorm warning is for 58 mile per hour wind gusts. So still shy of that, but once again, still packing a punch. And there's a lot of lightning with these storms as well. In fact, let's put on the lightning tracker here. Here's lightning count. So these are noisy. These are probably flashy with all the lightning. Looks like lightning strikes almost more than 1,000 strikes, excuse me, with these storms that are tracking through Kentuckiana. And once again, we're also seeing, of course, localized heavy rainfall. Anytime you're dealing with a lot of these reds on radar, you know you're seeing those pockets of heavy rainfall here, including with this storm that popped up at ahead of the line once again in the Louisville metro area. Now, in terms of wind gusts, as I mentioned, some gusts up to about 50 miles per hour possible with these storms. So keep that in mind. These are really packing a punch. Now, our severe weather outlook for today was a level 1 out of 5, primarily for strong winds, exactly what we're seeing right now. So when you're under a level 1 out of 5, that means usually you have an isolated risk of some of these storms reaching that severe criteria. Once again, that's 58 mile per hour wind gust or hail the size of quarters or larger. So as I mentioned, we haven't had any severe thunderstorm warnings so far, but those storms just shy of that severe criteria. So still very important to keep an eye on the sky and the radar. If you hear thunder, it is time to head indoors. And of course, the storms, they do have quite a bit of fuel to tap into thanks to this heat advisory we were under today. That continues until 8 o'clock this evening. You can see that does include the Louisville metro area, all those spots along and west of I-65, thanks to those high heat indices. And if I put that into storm fuel mode, bright yellows here, that shows quite a bit of storm fuel. A lot less of that storm fuel the farther east that you do go there. So as those storms continue to track south and southeast for tonight, they should lose some of their steam. But taking a live look outside from our Hughes and Coleman U of L health camera, you can tell the skies are getting dark after a pretty sunny day. Temperatures should be cooling. Yes, they are. We topped out at 95 in Louisville today. Take a look at Paoli, Mitchell, Seymour, Scottsburg. I may have to drop our overnight low in Louisville. 70 in Madison. So those 70s, they're on the way here soon with that front moving through. Feels like temperatures still squeezing up into the upper 90s and triple digits out ahead of that front. Of course, that's due to all of the humidity. So if you're not seeing rain just yet, you're certainly feeling that moisture. Dew points in the mid 70s right now in Louisville. That's very high. Obviously, that's because we have some storms on the radar, but we do have some less humid days ahead. So I want to talk about the good news here. Humidity tracker decreasing somewhat after tomorrow. We should see that gradual drop in some of our dew points tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, still hanging out in the 60s, which is muggy. But not as bad as the lower 70s or mid 70s, which of course we felt off and on throughout this summer. And then Sunday into early next week. This is going to feel, if you recall that first weekend of August, how it was almost early fall-like. We had very low humidity, cool mornings, cool nights, and it was very, very pleasant. That's how it's going to feel Sunday. And it's going to feel even drier Monday and Tuesday of next week. I'll have to look back, if I can look back, and see the last time we had dew points in the 40s. So that's going to feel fantastic. Your 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, you can see we are in the deep blue there, which means we are well below normal for temperatures. This is the 25th through the 29th, so next work week. And for us, our average is still in the upper 80s this time of year. So this means those forecasted temperatures will be well below that, likely upper 70s, lower 80s during that time frame. Relief on the way. You can see this here with our models. So those pinks going back off to the west. Goodbye high heat and humidity. We're going to feel a bit more of that relief throughout the week, and then a big drop. Take a look at that. With that trough moving through northwest flow, that brings you that cooler air, that less humid air for the start of next week. Here's another way to look at it. And I was somewhat conservative with these temperatures. I usually wait a little bit until we're closer before going like way on the deep end, but I would expect many spots in Kentuckiana to have some highs in maybe the mid to upper 70s early next week. Louisville tends to run warmer, of course, in the city, so I think 80 degrees still looks pretty good. Overnight lows dropping into the upper 50s to around 60 in Louisville. That means even cooler outside of the city. But let's go back to what we're dealing with right now, and of course, that is a pretty active radar. As I mentioned before, nothing severe. But some pockets of heavy rainfall here, some gusty winds. This is heading over Bartstown Road here soon, so Fern Creek likely going to get a pretty heavy downpour right now. Buttrell, that's moving into your area. Newburgh seeing some heavy rain once again. And a few of these spots might have gotten, we had a couple isolated downpours this afternoon as well. They tend to kind of favor this area here. But you know what I mentioned about those outflow boundaries, how they can sometimes weaken the storm behind it? We are seeing some breaks in this line. So this is going to be one of those setups where even though it looks like everybody's going to see rain, you can tell there's going to be little pockets in here where you might be like, I didn't get anything at my house. The skies got dark. I saw a lot of lightning, heard some thunder, and that was it. But other pockets, very heavy rainfall. Leavenworth, New Amsterdam, Leopold, heavy rain here. Lots of lightning as well crossing the Ohio into Meade County, and then it looks like we're getting some heavy rain in Oldham County, over to Campbellsburg as well. Lexington, that's Indiana. So a lot of lightning. Wow. Take a look at that. I'm going to put a query on this just to see how much lightning. 322 strikes. That's a lot. So that's probably a very noisy storm. Once again, the general direction of these is they're moving south-southeast, and I will say they are clocking along pretty quickly. So this one storm in Louisville is kind of the outlier because it kind of blew up around itself there. You take a look at all these boundaries. There's a boundary there, there's a boundary there. Getting just a little downpour over near Prospect. So as I mentioned, nothing severe, but as we've seen several times this summer, something doesn't necessarily have to be severe to pack a punch. You know, we've had some storms with just a ton of lightning, but that's not your severe weather criteria. You know, it's the particular wind gusts, the particular size of hail. We're obviously a tornado threat, but thankfully we're not dealing with that tonight. We're just dealing with heavy rainfall and gusty winds. I'm currently checking the National Weather Service chat to see if there's any new information here. They still have that special weather statement for many of us through 8:15 due to wind gusts up to about 50 miles per hour. Did get a report of a tree falling on a building. This is in Okolona on Dunwoody Court. But the highest gust that we got at the airport was 37 miles per hour. French Lick, though, clocking a wind gust of 59 miles per hour. So that actually did reach severe criteria, at least for a very brief period of time there. You can tell where the heaviest rainfall is really collecting. So this is heading over Perry County, over to Meade County as well. Likely we'll be moving toward Hardinsburg here soon in Breckenridge County. So we'll see how this hangs together. But let's take a look at the hour-by-hour model here and how it's initializing. So it looks like it's just a tad bit slow, but I will say I started using this in-house model this afternoon rather than, there are basically two high-resolution models that I go back and forth between. And this one always likes to turn things into a line rather than having more isolated pop-ups. And the way things were forming this afternoon, I could kind of tell that it was going to become linear. So I went with this one. It's doing pretty well with the timing. I said around 8 o'clock in the Louisville Metro, of course, outside of that very isolated storm that we have around Newburgh right now. But the front will dive through. The question is, as that sun continues to set, will we lose all of our steam? This model says so after about, what is that, 11? Things become a lot spottier. We might have some storms reforming down to the south. But the thing about this frontal passage that a lot of the model data agrees on for tomorrow is the fact that it's going to be down to our south and southeast by the time we head into the heat of the afternoon, when you typically see those storms that want to redevelop. So because of that, tomorrow is trending drier than it previously looked, which is good news if you have Wednesday plans. I may actually also decrease this high of 89. That might be a little too warm. I'm thinking 88 or so, and then maybe 87 or 86 on Thursday. We're back up to 90 for Friday and Saturday. So that's still seasonally warm. Upper 80s is our average. Of course, we have high school football starting this weekend. We have WKU playing a football game at home on Saturday down at Bowling Green. We're going to have a front that moves through Saturday, and once again, that's basically a reinforcing front that's then going to drive down our temperatures and our dew points next week. It's honestly trending very dry on all the model data. I put a 20% just in case it taps into something, because sometimes that will change as we get closer, but I think we're trending pretty quiet and dry after tonight. So next week is looking fantastic. Monday and Tuesday, expect those highs, I think, in the 70s outside of Louisville. We have low 80s for the Louisville Metro. Overnight lows in the upper 50s to around 60. Let's see what your 8 to 14 day temperature outlook looks like. Still trending below normal. This is as we get into Labor Day weekend. So that will be an interesting trend to watch. While I have you, I do want to just do a quick update on the tropics here. So obviously we've been tracking Hurricane Erin all week, since over the weekend, since late last week, really since it was just off the coast of Africa. Over the weekend, in case you missed it, it did strengthen to a Cat 5 for a period of time, rapidly intensified. The wind speeds have lessened, but the size of the storm itself is just huge. You can see it stretching between the Bahamas to the southwest, to Bermuda to the northeast. Wind speeds are still 105 miles per hour, so obviously certainly something to take seriously, moving toward the north-northwest at 10 miles per hour. If you've been tracking this hurricane on its current track, it's not going to make landfall, so that's good news, but the Outer Banks of North Carolina, many of them were evacuated due to the threat of high waves. The water can really wash out the roads there. There's really only one road in and out of the Outer Banks. So they evacuated a lot of the Outer Banks, I think, around Cape Hatteras. This will really remain around Cat 2 strength, and then as it curves off to sea into that cooler water, it'll eventually weaken, of course, as we head into the weekend. But it is peak hurricane season here from mid-August to really through September. And the last couple of years, we've had a lot of storms in October. So we're really just getting started there with the activity in the Atlantic. But let's rope around back here. I'm going to pop myself up for anybody who hopped on here a little delayed. Hey there, Chief Meteorologist Mallory Schnell with WHAS 11. In Louisville, Kentucky, we have been tracking some strong storms thanks to a front moving through the area. Thankfully, nothing severe, so you're not seeing those warnings crawl across your screen. You're not getting any kind of updates on your phone if you do have severe warnings, but you might be getting some heavy rainfall, gusty winds. You might be hearing the thunder, seeing the lightning flashes. If you have any plans out there, out and about this evening, you do want to take precautions. So we're going to walk back through the radar one more time. We'll take a look at the hour-by-hour and 7-day forecast, and then we'll start to wrap up things here. But let's take you back out to the Max HD radar. So once again, some pockets of heavy rainfall. It does look like increasing now over Butyl. Up to Anchorage as well, so moving into the east side, down to Bullitt County, just north of Mount Washington. And just to the north here, some heavy rain heading toward Floyd's Knobs, over Starlight, Sellersburg. Might not be as much lightning here as some of these other pockets. I mean, this pocket is intense. Off to the west, moving into Meade County right now, crossing the river. That is a lot of lightning coming in from Crawford County. We had some gusty winds up north near French Lick, heavy rainfall over to Tell City, and then Henryville, a lot of lightning there, heavy rain moving into Charlestown, New Washington. But if you were listening earlier, you want to soak in whatever rain you can get tonight, because we are trending a lot drier really over the next, I would say, 7 to 10 days. So this front sparking a few additional storms downstream. Looks like over Nelson County, you might be hearing some thunder, seeing some lightning out there as these storms continue to dive to the south and southeast. Once again, we were under level 1 out of 5 for severe weather today. Not a big surprise since we had so much heat and humidity. Of course, that's fuel for your thunderstorms. And then when you have a triggering mechanism that allows those storms to develop, like a front, that can cause some of them to get pretty strong. We had that heat advisory today that expires in the next 10 minutes. Let's take a look at some of our temperatures. Dark skies, obviously, over downtown Louisville. Temps are starting to drop, especially in southern Indiana. A lot of those 70s out there. More 80s and 90s down to the south. We made it up to 95 today in Louisville. Still have a feels like temperature of 99. That's not going to be around much longer, because as this front moves through, obviously the rain will cool us off. Gusty winds rolling through, lots of lightning in some of these pockets here. So these are going to be noisy storms, as I mentioned. Nothing severe, but if you hear thunder, it's time to head indoors. I know they're having people head indoors at the fair, but I'm going to put on velocity just to see any pockets of, yeah, it looks like we got some gusty winds headed toward Brandenburg. See some slightly brighter greens there. Looks like we had a bright green that rolled through Oldham County as well. Bright greens usually mean gustier winds, or bright reds, depending on if the wind's going away or toward the radar. All right, so your hour-by-hour futurecast as we carry on throughout this evening, basically much of the same. We're going to have these storms continue to dive to the south and southeast. This particular model has things weakening once we head toward 10, 11 o'clock with some of the loss of daytime heating. And then tomorrow, this front should really be pushing down to the southeast. So we can't rule out a very spotty shower or storm. Sometimes you get that when cooler air overruns air that's trying to warm up at the surface. But I think tomorrow's looking pretty quiet and partly sunny. And then Thursday, the trend has been a bit more cloud cover around with even cooler temperatures. So here's one last look at your 7-day forecast. Once again, upper 80s behind this front Wednesday, maybe even some mid 80s possible Thursday, I think, in many spots. Behind that, we start to warm things up, at least for about 2 days, around 90 for Friday and Saturday. But once again, humidity should be a little bit lower than it has been. And then that reinforcing front moves through this weekend. That's going to drop us back into the mid 80s on Sunday, right around 80 degrees Monday and Tuesday, with lows in the upper 50s to lower 60s. So I will leave you with this look at the radar here. Expect some gusty winds, heavy rain, lots of lightning, maybe some noisy storms. Hopefully you get some moisture out of these storms, because as I mentioned, after this, we're trending pretty quiet through the weekend, and it looks like much of next week as well. But once again, Chief Meteorologist Mallory Schnell here with WHAS 11 in Louisville. Thanks for hopping on this stream. You can catch us again tonight on WHAS 11 at 11. So if you're heading out tonight, just stay safe. Enjoy the rain if you're staying in. And I will catch you at 11 p.m. Have a good evening.